Hi there. So this is our senior class of stories. And our story today comes from O. Henry, who is not a candy bar. If you remember the O. Henry bars from years ago, I'm not sure if you had those then, but if they even still make them. But O. Henry was a pen name, and that was the name that he used when he authored stories and things. And he is what we like to call a master of irony. He always has a twist at the end of his stories. And he loves to surprise you as to how the story will come out. So for our questions, here's the part about the pacing of your class. On your letter, you have a box, and in the box is what you're supposed to do for that week. This week's story is the O. Henry story, The Guilty Party. Ideally, you should read the story on Monday. Tuesday, do the questions. Wednesday, do the discussion question. You only have to pick one of those. They're kind of lengthy, and I'm looking for a lengthy response, not 2 sentences. Most of them have 2 questions in there, so you're at the very least going to have 2 sentences, but you have to explain why you feel the way you feel in there as well. So I offered up that you should just do one of those, and pick one that you can answer well. And then on Friday, do a TED Talk or do one of the podcasts. So those are the things that are on our trajectory. You can pace it any way you want to. If you want to do all your English on Tuesday and read the story, read it with me on here in this forum, and then do your questions and do the discussion questions. And then maybe if you get bored with doing math, you switch over to a podcast for your Friday activity. If you need a break from one of your other subjects. And, that's completely up to you. You don't have to do it in the order that I laid it out for you. I just thought if you wanted to do a little English every day, you'd have a little English to do. If you want to pace yourself as doing it all, you're coming into a time in your life when you're going to be going to either training programs or college or maybe into the workforce, and you're going to need to learn how to pace yourself as far as what work needs to get done and in what time frame and what your deadlines are. And this is great practice for that. So, the idea is you have a little to do every day, or you can do it all in one day and get that project all done and turned in and done with. That would be great. So our questions today are in the packet on the back of the story. They're the first ones. Almost all of them come in a Part A, Part B format, and a lot of that is about evidence. So first, you're going to make a claim about something. How do you feel about this thing? Which one of these answers? And then, okay, so where in the text does it say that? And so they're asking you to go back to the text and look for the answers. So, for instance, in number 1, which statement best describes the kid's influence on Lizzie? A, the kid, though not a particularly devoted fiancé, as we find out, nevertheless provides Livy with more love and support than she has experienced at home. B, the kid loves Lizzie and intends to marry her, although he is extremely jealous and willing to take drastic measures to ensure that she is faithful to him. Though he intends to marry Lizzie, the kid has introduced her to a rough, unrefined life. D, the kid is an abusive fiancé who has forced Lizzie into a life of alcoholism and crime. So which describes the kid's influence? And once you decide that, then the second question, you have to prove where it is in the story that it tells you that. Part B, which detail from the text best supports the answer to Part A? A, look at that ring, $500, and he said that it cost. B, then the kid came along one evening and sized me up. C, the first drink he made me take, I cried all night at home. And D, me, I'll cut his heart out. All right, so 3, which statement best describes how Liz is characterized in paragraphs 24 and 25? Liz is flamboyant and colorful in her dress. Liz is not wealthy, but does her best to present herself nicely. Liz is not wealthy and dresses shabbily. Liz has more money than she lets on, judging from her style of dress. Paragraphs 24 and 25. So in your reading, that's all the way back on the second page, I believe. Liz's skirt was green silk. Her waist was a large brown and pink plaid, well-fitting and not without style. She wore a cluster ring of huge imitation rubies and a locket that banged her knees at the bottom of her silver chain. Her shoes were run down over twisted high heels and were strangers to polish. Her hat would scarcely have passed into a flour barrel. The family entrance of the Blue Jay Cafe received her. At a table she sat and punched the button with the air of milady, ringing her for her carriage. The waiter came with his large-chinned, low-voiced manner of respectfully familiarity. Liz smoothed her silken skirt with a satisfied wriggle. She made the most of it. All right. Number 4. Which 2 details from the text best support the answer for part A? And then they give you all the options. You have to pick 2. Remember, 2. Her waist was a large brown and pink plaid. B, well-fitting and not without style. C, she wore a cluster ring. D, a locket that banged her knees at the bottom of a silver chain. E, her shoes were run down over twisted high heels and were strangers to polish. F, punched the button with the air of milady, ringing for her carriage. If you've watched any Downton Abbey, you know what that's about. All right, so 5. How does the author's description of Liz as fate in a green silk skirt impact the meaning of paragraph 40? All right, so she was fate in a green silk skirt on paragraph 40. $35. And while they sat there, the lights were being turned on for the dance hall, for the Small Hours Social Club. It was a bi-monthly dance, a dress affair in which the members took great pride and bestirred themselves huskily to further adorn. At 9 o'clock, the president, Kid Mullally, paced upon the floor with a lady on his arm. As the Laurelleys were her hair golden, her yes was softened to a yah, but its quality of assent was patent to the most Malaysian ears. She stepped upon her own train and blushed, and she smiled into the eyes of Kid Mullally. And then, as the two in the middle of the waxed floor, the thing happened to prevent which many lamps are burning nightly in many studies and libraries. Out of the circle of spectators in the hall leaped Fate in a green silk skirt, under the nom de guerre of Liz. Her eyes were hard and blacker than jet, and she did not scream or waver. Most unwomanly, she cried out one oath, the kid's own favorite oath, and in his own deep voice, and then, while the Small Hours Social Club went frantically to pieces, she made good her boast to Tommy, the waiter, made good as far as the length of her knife blade and the strength of her arm permitted. Alrighty, so it describes the event as one that was bound to happen. It describes Liz as irrational and unthinking. It emphasizes Liz's rough but ethereal beauty. It illustrates the narrator's opinion that Liz is doing the right thing. All right, so what does Liz as fate in a green silk skirt impact the meaning? So 6, how does the characterization of a good mother East River contribute to the tone of paragraph 45? So in paragraph 45, knowing her way and hungry for her surcease, she darted down the familiar ways until at last her feet struck the dull solidity of the rotting pier. And then it was but a few more panting steps, and good Mother East River took Liz to her bosom, soothed her muddily but quickly, and settled in 5 minutes the problem that keeps lights burning o' nights in thousands of pastorates and colleagues. All right. So they characterize the river as a good mother. That's what do we call that? Personification, because the mother, a river can't really be a mother, but it's acting as a mother in that Liz has done this terrible thing, and she's run away. And she ran to the edge of the pier. And instead of thinking about it in such a way as that she was running away from something, she ran and jumped into the water. And the mother, this river, took her in and held her and kept her safe and took her away from this life that she had created and this problem that had been created. And they talk a lot about that, a lot of people had lights burning and that where people stay up late at night thinking. And what they're trying to say there is that this issue, this story is, it's pervasive. It's common in all cultures, in all places where a girl is born. She's a child of a father who doesn't pay attention to her. And he tells her to go play in the street, so she does. And she meets a fella who is a little more attentive than the father, but not any more fun. And he somehow meets her feelings of superiority that I'm a good girl, I'm a good person, I deserve better kind of thing. He says, fine, all right, then I'll take Annie to the dance, and I'll teach her a lesson. And she tells Tommy, I'm going to teach him a lesson. And so who's really at fault here? Who's really at fault? So, as a good mother, the mother takes in the child, regardless of what's happened, and the East River is willing to accept her, even if, the kid has rejected her, and her dad rejected her, and she has learned a life of rejection, and going to her death seems like being accepted. So A, it calls attention to Liz's young age by suggesting that the river in which she ultimately drowns is like a mother. B, it illustrates Liz's strong connection to nature. C, it characterizes Liz's death as an escape from a life of pain and sorrow. And D, it suggests the idea of a God figure accepting Liz into her rightful place in heaven. So part B, you got to prove it. Which detail in the text best supports that answer? A, pollution and disgrace. B, the dull solidity of the rotting pier. C, took Liz to her bosom. And D, muddily but quickly. How does the author's repetition of the red-haired, unshaven, untidy man contribute to the story's central ideas? A, it characterizes Lizzie's family as hostile and immoral and helps explain how they inherited these same traits, which eventually result in the story's climax. B, it matches the structure of the rest of the text, emphasizing the repetitive nature of life in American cities. C, it emphasizes the struggle that Lizzie's father had to endure in life, suggesting that his own father was just as neglectful to him as he is to Lizzie. D, it highlights the significance of Lizzie's father's lack of positive influence on her life, which ultimately leads to her crime and early death. So number 9 is an opinion question. There's not a wrong answer here because, this is your experience with the text. Who is the guilty party at the end of the text, and how do his actions contribute to the story's theme? So who is guilty of this crime? Ultimately, the person who wielded the weapon is guilty, but then there were some things that came along that were an ingredient to that crime. All right, so the next one, there is one more fill in the blank on the back, number 10. Don't forget, in paragraph 46, the point of view changes from third person to first person. What's the purpose of this change in point of view? So in the last couple paragraphs of the story, suddenly we have this person who's like saying, it's mighty funny what kind of dreams one has sometimes. Poets call them visions, but a vision is only a dream. Okay, so technical difficulties aside, my phone is not cooperating. But anyway, so we were talking about fate. So anybody in the class know what fate means? Fate is the thing that we sometimes hold over ourselves, that it's just inevitable. That, obviously if you put your sleeping bag on the railroad tracks, eventually your fate is you're going to get run over. We hope that we make better decisions than that. For those of you who have ever watched Hercules, the Disney version of Hercules, you remember the 3 fates, who were the 3 witches, and one held onto your yarn, onto your string, and one measured your string, and then the third witch cut your string, and those were the 3 fates. And it was, how long your life would be, or how rich your life would be, or how what was your fate. Those 3 muses from Greek mythology would make the decisions. And so some people, believe that there are things in your life that you're just destined to do, and that there's no way around it. Destiny and fate, and whether or not human responsibility, all those things play into that. So we say that she was fate in a green silk skirt. And so what is the meaning of that in paragraph 40? A, it describes the event that was bound to happen. B, it describes Liz as irrational and unthinking. C, it emphasizes Liz's rough but ethereal beauty. D, it illustrates the narrator's opinion that Liz is doing the right thing. And I guess you have to decide about the narrator there, whether or not he's trustworthy. It ends up being a dream, so I don't know. So 6, how does the characterization of Good Mother East River contribute to the tone of paragraph 45? In this case, we have something. Does anybody know what that's called when we call a river a mother? So what is that? Crickets. It's personification. So obviously a river can't be a mother, but in this story, she runs off the end of the pier into the river, and they kind of characterize that as her running off into the arms of someone who cares about her and who understands her and takes her for who she is and is willing to love her, much like a mother. So the river was welcoming to her in a place that was not welcoming to her. So how does the characterization contribute to the tone of paragraph 45? It calls attention to Liz's young age by suggesting that the river in which she ultimately drowns is like a mother. B, it illustrates Liz's strong connection to nature. C, it characterizes Liz's death as an escape from life of pain and sorrow. Or D, it suggests the idea of a God figure accepting Liz into her rightful place in heaven. Part 7. Part B is number 7. Which detail from the text best supports that answer? A, it's pollution and disgrace. B, it's dull solidity of the rotting pier. C, took Liz to her bosom. Or D, muddily but quickly. 8, how does the author's repetition of the red-haired, unshaven, untidy man contribute to the story's central ideas? So it characterizes Lizzie's family as hostile and immoral and helps explain how she inherited these same traits, which eventually result in the story's climax. B, it matches the structure of the rest of the text, emphasizing the repetitive nature of life in America's cities. C, it emphasizes the struggle that Lizzie's father had to endure in life, suggesting that his own father was just as neglectful to him as he is to Lizzie. It highlights the significance of Lizzie's father's lack of positive influence on her life, which ultimately leads to her crime and her early death. So number 9 begs the question, who is the guilty party? In the end of the text, how does his actions contribute to the story's theme? The end of the story, the bailiff or the guy who kind of runs the door at the courthouse says, "Oh, it was a terrible tale." And ultimately the guilty party is the red-haired, unshaven, untidy man who doesn't even get a name in this story. So, what's the scoop with that? All of us have a responsibility to others, and what we do sometimes is what shapes them to do bad things. So in this case, we can trace this back to an unfeeling and unavailable father to this little girl, as well as to the man who was sitting by the window, and then as well probably to that man as well. Our families pass down things, and some of those things are not so nice. That there was some people come out of an unavailable father and say, "I'll never do that to my kids." Other people come out of that situation unable to deal with reality any better than their dad did, and they react much the same. And then there are the people who have terrible upbringings who often say, "Well, I was brought up that way, so should he, what's your problem?" And they often follow that statement with, "I turned out fine." And I'm not sure that's true. All right, so in our last paragraph, question for this section, in paragraph 46, the point of view changes from third person to first person. And I think this is where I left off with that other video. So I'm going to let you go there, and it will cut to that. It's going to be weird, and I'm sorry. Okay, to pick up where we left off, I run out of space on my iPhone every time. I'm trying to delete pictures, but I'm not getting there. So in paragraph 46, the point of view changes. I think where I left off was I was reading the part where he goes from talking omnisciently, like he's watching this unfold, to, "I think I dreamt this. I dreamed the rest of this story. I thought I was in the next world. I don't know how I got there. I suppose I had been riding on the 9th Avenue elevated, or taking patent medicine, or trying to pull Jim Jeffries' nose, or doing something little injustice, injurious stunt. But anyhow, there I was, and there was a great crowd of us outside the courtroom." So we watch this story unfold, and then we find out that perhaps it's a dream sequence, and he's dreamt the whole thing. So what's the purpose of that? Why does he do that? Why does the author do that? So then on the back you have, I think, 3 discussion questions, and you need to pick just one to answer. Pick one that you like, that you have the answer to. The directions say to brainstorm your ideas for the following questions and then be prepared to share those ideas in class discussion. And obviously, we're not having class discussion. However, you should pick one that you can discuss on your own. So number one, who is the guilty party? Is it Liz? Or is it that red-haired, unshaven, untidy man? Or is it the kid? Is it her friends that she has made a bet with that she could cut that guy's heart out? And then she feels like she has to, like, make that happen. You know, she has to fulfill her promise. You know, is it the peer pressure from the other people? Is it Tommy? Is it the waiter? Is it, you know, is it somebody else? And how can you decide? Number two, consider this line. And next came the primal instinct of self-preservation, or was it self-annihilation? The instinct that society has grafted on our natural branch. How do you think the primal instinct of self-preservation affects people's actions? So if you think about an incident that happens at school, or maybe it happens out in the world somewhere, or maybe it happens on the unit, where someone is, shall we say, backed into a corner, and they act out. Was it an act of self-defense? Self-preservation? Or was it an act of self-annihilation? Sometimes we are destroying ourselves. You know, sometimes we get backed into a corner and we do something that is definitely going to screw us in the long run. For right this minute, it means that I get what I want, or I prevent what I don't want to happen happening, or I make someone feel the way I feel, or whatever. But way down the road, it messes that up. You know, you lose your Timberwolf, and now you can't go on the field trip. In the moment, you wanted to get your point across, and in the moment, you wanted to do something because you were hurting, or because you were scared, or because you were afraid, or because you were angry, and you acted out. And now in the end, it has meant something that is really destroying you. And so it becomes an act not of defense, but an act of annihilation of ourselves. How do you think that affects people's actions, and where do you see this to be true? So number three, what makes people do bad things? Use evidence from the short story, your own experience, and from other works of art or literature. We have lots of examples in movies and TV where people do bad things, and they perhaps don't think it through, or perhaps they think it all through and they've got it all planned out how it's going to end. And it doesn't end that way, you know? So think about things movies you've seen, or television shows where you've watched someone make risky decision, and you know, it could come out good, but boy, it could go bad. And then maybe you're judged on that decision of having something bad happen, when really what you meant was to have something good happen. I don't know. So those are what makes people do bad things, you know. In our novel that we are reading when we're in class, which I wish we could get back to, The Serpent King, you look at the motivations of those characters. What makes, what made Dill's dad do bad things? What makes his mom blame Dill? Travis's dad, what a jerk. Why is he a jerk? He's had some pretty terrible experiences, and it has rendered him a jerk. And, what makes him do the things that he does? What makes him put fingers in the batter of a cake that's being made for somebody's birthday? What makes him do that gross thing. Lick the fingers, then put them back in the batter. Ugh. So anyway, there you go. What motivated Liz? What motivates the kid? And ultimately didn't end well for the kid. So now, then your next issue is the writing assignment, which is to find, and you'll find that with the, if you didn't get one in your packet, there's one on the, in my email where the letter, it's called grade 12 letter. And after you get through the letter part, there's the writing assignment. There's an example there of what a text analysis looks like. There is a fill in the blank section where you can fill in the blank and then rewrite it as a text analysis. You've got to figure out, first of all, what the central theme is. And of course, the central theme is always kind of what the author is trying to get across to us. And it's kind of a life lesson. And then how does he use a literary term to do that? There are literary devices that he uses to reveal that central theme to us. And so what are the, what is the literary device that he uses to get that idea across to us? So I hope you've had a good time, and I look forward to our next time together. If you have questions, you can leave them in the comment section of this video, and I will answer them. Or you can email me your questions, and I will answer them there. One of the things that we don't have the great advantage is where somebody in the classroom asks a question that was your question, but you don't have to answer it now because somebody else asked it. Hopefully the comment section under this video on YouTube will help with that. There will be people who will ask questions and you'll be able to answer them. Otherwise, you can email your question and I will answer it directly to you. Hopefully we will get some tech advice on how to use WebEx so that you can talk to me directly in real time. I haven't had a lot of training on that, but I'm learning how to do this, and I will learn how to do that. So I am confident that I can get that going. Otherwise, I'm open for any questions if you want to, and I'm here for you if you need. Appreciate it, and stay safe and stay home. Thanks.